Hi everyone, welcome to Coffee Break with Your Soul. My name is Maggie. It's been quite a while since I last recorded a video. The last couple of months have been quite interesting. It's been quite a ride, and today's video is really a result of quite a few conversations that I had in the last 2 months with my friends and people close to me, but also all kinds of other people about the post-awakening journey. It is a topic that really, really fascinates me, and I have been exploring it both in terms of my own experience, but just in general, reading quite a bit about it and discovering more and more just amazing people that I really didn't know existed right up till recently, who so beautifully and openly talk about the process of integrating awakening and the process of embodiment. So I I didn't know how to really title this video, so I chose to call it the bit about awakening that no one wants to hear about. And when I say no one, of course, it's an exaggeration. There are many people, if not more people than usual, who actually want to hear more about the process of integration and embodiment. And I'm not surprised, because if I look around, even just on YouTube, and look at the conversations about non-duality, the focus for the most part, I believe, is on the sort of transcendent part of awakening. And there are so many conversations about, no self, and there being no body, and the illusion, and all these kind of concepts and language that we're familiar with, that are inevitable when it comes to spiritual teachings or teachings about non-dual awakening. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with these concepts, or with this language, or with this teaching. In fact, this is where we all start, and these are important pointers that teachers use to point us to realizing our true nature. It doesn't surprise me in a way that the people who talk about that transcendent part of awakening, the teachers who talk about it, they have a lot, thousands and thousands of subscribers, thousands and thousands of views, in comparison to those teachers and those people who talk about the very human experience of post-awakening, the very challenging part of post-awakening process, and who talk about the process of integrating and embodying awakening. And when I look at the number of subscribers that they have, I mean, it's just a fraction of the numbers that teachers who focus on the transcendent side, the absolute, have. And again, absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just an observation. And I truly believe that it's a shame. It really is a shame that this part of awakening is not really talked about enough. And I believe that it is not talked about enough, or is not talked about a lot, is simply because it can be absolutely ruthless process for many, and absolutely brutal and incredibly uncomfortable. So in a way, it doesn't surprise me that while everyone is looking for the bliss and the liberation and the escape and the transcending of human experience, to hear that even after realizing our true nature, we're still having very much to deal with human experience, and often even more powerfully than before. Then I'm not surprised that many of us would rather not hear about it. So I want to make something very clear before I continue, before any kind of conceptual / non-dual police come at me, that this is not a video about the absolute. This is not a video about there being no process and nothing to be embodied and all of that, because frankly, at this point in time, and based on the conversations I've been having, like I said, for the past 2 months with all kinds of people, this is really not helpful. This is where all these concepts, when we're in the midst of falling apart, are really not helpful. And actually, there's a huge difference when these concepts are spoken from the place of truth, because when they are spoken from the place of truth, then that truth is being deeply felt, and we connect deeply with what's behind these words, behind these concepts. But when these concepts are spoken not from the place of truth, but from the level of the mind, as a way to deny the reality, as a way to deny the human experience, then really they're nothing but that, just concepts, just some kind of spiritual tropes. It's just noise. They really don't carry much meaning, not to mention helpful meaning in those moments. So really, this video, I really want to dedicate it to everyone who is now experiencing this absolutely ruthless and raw post-awakening journey. I want to dedicate it to those who in that process, because of that process, might be doubting their awakening and questioning whether what they realized was actually an awakening. And because this is absolutely true, that and also very much part of the process, that after a period of what is called a honeymoon period, or what I call living on a cloud 9 after we experienced awakening, there comes a point when shit hits the fan, basically, and it can come sometimes weeks, sometimes months, sometimes years. Like in my case, there's a trigger, there's perhaps an event, there's a situation that creates a kind of opening, which brings all kinds of things that were perhaps deeply unconscious to the surface, all kinds of patterns, all kinds of conditioning, all kinds of compulsions, attachments, addictions, and so on. And I want to make it very clear also that this is what I'm talking about doesn't have to apply to everybody. It is absolutely, there are no rules here. We're so different. And so for some people, the post-awakening journey can be only a bit bumpy, and maybe just for a while. For others, it will be incredibly bumpy, and it will literally feel like dying. The more attachments, the more stories, the more beliefs, the more personas we've created over the years, and the moment they start sort of falling apart, and that feeling of nothing to hold on to anymore, it can be terrifying, and it really feels like like death, and it can come in one big swoop, but it can also be a gradual process. There really are no rules. There are people who perhaps did a lot of work in terms of therapy, so they address their traumas, I address their wounds from childhood. And so once the awakening happens, then there isn't that much psychology that needs to be tidied up, that needs to be met and seen in terms of how it's playing out in our lives, and in which case then that process of integration and embodiment will be a smoother ride. But I also know enough kind of examples of people who have spent years and years in therapy and addressed all kinds of things, and yet post awakening there's still stuff coming to the surface that they never really dealt with, that we're not even aware of. And so it is very important that we really don't treat anybody's journey prior to awakening, during awakening, after awakening as a rule, as kind of model as to how this is supposed to work. But the reason why I wanted to talk about it, because as ruthless and painful as this process can be, this is also something that after a while we actually welcome. We actually want for things to come out, and sometimes it's actually not even a case of choice. These things are to our face, you know, our conditioning, our behavioral patterns, and all kinds of things that are really uncomfortable to see. And in particular, when we get to the point when the mirroring, anytime the mirroring kind of happens by default, it's simply happening every time we go into blaming, every time we want to point finger at someone, every time you know, we don't like or dislike or are triggered by certain behaviors of others. You know, there is a turnaround, there's a boomerang like arrow that literally hits right turns around and hits right back at us, and we're forced to see the very motives, the very same behaviors, the very same sentiments, feelings, and emotions that triggered certain behaviors in ourselves. And so it really is a painful process when there is no escape and there's no running away from seeing certain things about ourselves. And it's uncomfortable because with that may come a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. But even that wants to be met. This is why, for as long as we're in this body and we're having this human experience, this is the reason why I see awakening as a verb. And it's an ongoing journey. It's a journey that really never ends, and actually fully begins only after we actually realize our true nature. And it's a fascinating journey, and it is a journey of absolutely brutal, ruthless honesty with ourselves first and foremost. It is a journey of daily vigilance to see where we are still being attached to certain beliefs, where we're attached to certain personas that we have been carefully curating over the years. Perhaps a persona of us when we're with our families, and a different persona when it comes to our careers and our workplaces. perhaps a spiritual persona, the persona of a spiritually awakened person, and all kinds of righteousness and nobility that we might feel around it, or perhaps even superiority. Our attachments to non-attachment and not feeling human emotions and not allowing ourselves to meet our experience and the reality of what is being felt in the moment without any judgment, without trying to fix it or gloss it over with some kind of spiritual concept. At some point, there's a deeper and deeper seeing of the divinity of our human experience, so that human experience is not only not denied, not pushed aside, not glossed over, it's actually something that is fully embraced and seen as divine. So any kind of separation that may be still playing out within us, within how we perceive things, how we perceive the world, how we perceive other people, wants to be seen, wants to be seen. And the more we are open to not denying any parts, including the so-called ugly parts, the shadow parts of ourselves, then they really become an intrinsic part of that divinity taking a given form in any given moment. And the war, the inner war with our humanness ends. It becomes one thing. And everything is welcome. Everything wants to be seen. Everything is included, without judgment, without attempts to fix it, without attempts to like I said, gloss it over with some kind of spiritual concept, bypass it. None of that makes sense anymore. And so when we don't do that, when we refuse to dismiss or deny our conditioning, our conditioned behaviors or patterns, our compulsions, our attachments, then sooner or later they really come biting us in the ass, sooner or later, and they continue to play out. And it's one of the biggest misunderstandings, that just because someone realized their true nature, that somehow it erases these things. It is absolutely possible, because if it's immediately seen, if all these things are being seen, then of course that can absolutely be the case. But in many, if not most cases, a lot of these things only begin to resurface, only begin to be seen. What's unconscious become conscious. And so, and it needs to be seen, and it wants to be seen, and it wants to be met. And so when it's not seen and when it's not met, then it plays out it plays out and continues to play out in our relationships, in particular our close relationships with family, with our partners. It continues to plays out in our relationship to our bodies, in our relationship to food, and all kinds of other things. So it really takes some balls. It really takes some balls, because that vigilance means that we have to be brutally honest with ourselves, and that we want to see where we are still bullshitting ourselves, and then where we're actually bullshitting others. That in particular, that we're somehow immune to certain things, that we are, stripped out of any beliefs or any conditioned thought patterns, that it's just we're just pure and absolutely perfect. After a while, we're not even interested in spiritual concepts anymore. We're not interested in spirituality. We're actually more and more interested in our humanness, in becoming intimate with our humanness. And so in that way, life becomes our spiritual practice. And every moment when we are triggered, every moment when we discover a certain contraction in ourselves, any moment when we feel upset or offended or righteous, every moment then becomes a satsang and an opportunity to see what's true. So this is what I wanted to talk about, and I'm sending so much love to everyone, but in particular those who might be having a really difficult time right now. I know that this is when we question our awakening, and if, like I said at the beginning, if we don't question that awakening, then I'm sure there will be people who will be questioning our awakening simply because we share this experience. But this is very much part of the process of awakening, and there is no experience, no matter how painful or challenging, that can tarnish or reverse what we saw to be true, that can take back our realization of who we truly are. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.